And so I thought it would be a great idea to share best practices, to talk to a couple of advisors and see how they are getting ready. I've got with me live Pete Matt. Pete is known in the industry as the creator of Meaningful Money in TV, and but he's actually the managing director of a financial advisory firm. So Pete, welcome to the show.
Hey Abraham, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. You?
Yeah, doing fine, thank you. Ready for the weekend though?
Good, good. Let's get this out of the way then, Pete, shall we?
Not at all. Looking forward to it.
So we're going to be talking about your investment process. So give us an idea, Pete. Tell us about your investment process.
Okay, well, when I got to Jackson's, which was now in 2005, I joined just as a self-employed advisor. I wasn't a director then. I didn't buy into the company for a couple of years after that. Mm-hmm. But I said to the guys here, I said, look, you know, we need not to be picking funds anymore. I mean, there was 3 directors here, and they were all kind of doing things slightly differently. Good guys, but classic transactional IFAs, you know. I mean, they've always done things right for the clients. That's why we've been around for 90 years. Not that they're that old, but, you know, nearly.
Wow.
But as a 90-year established firm, you know, you don't last that long if you don't do the job right.
No.
But, you know, I said to them, look, we need not to be picking funds anymore because, you know, the world is changing rapidly. And investment markets are not as easy as they were. You know, we sort of just about come out of the tech bubble bursting from 2000 to 2003, just about come out of that about a year and a half after that I got to Jackson's, and so we started having this discussion. And so what we did is we said, right, either we do choose funds and put together a robust process for doing so, or we don't, and we find somebody else to do it. And so we kind of looked at each other and said, look, can we really be bothered doing this? Is this really what we want to do? And we decided that it wasn't, that what we were actually good at was the planning and the relationship management bit, but the day-to-day money management we didn't want to be doing. It was just taking time away from what we really love to do. And so we decided to outsource. Now that's just us, okay? You know, I know there's many different ways of skinning the same cat, so, you know, I'm not saying that that is the way to do it, but for us it definitely was the only option, really, because we wouldn't have done a good job. We also realized that we, like our clients, would be retail investors, and by that I mean we'd be paying full price for the funds that we chose, full initial, you know, full AMC, whereas we knew that somebody with some scale, a discretionary manager that we would choose to outsource to, could probably not only do it better than us, but do it cheaper than us, which would seem to us to be a no-brainer. And so that's what we did extensive due diligence. I spoke to, I believe, something like 8 or 10 DFMs at the time. There weren't the tools available then that there are now, not quite so much research available. And of course, in choosing a discretionary manager is not just about performance, because it's very hard to compare one against another. You can with performance, but that's not, certainly from our point of view, what it's all about. So quite out of left field. Do you want me, by the way, to say who we did choose? Are you happy for me to do that?
Yeah, no, absolutely, yes.
Okay, quite out of left field came what was at the time a smallish firm called 7 Investment Management.
Yes.
Of course, Justin Urquhart Stewart is famous for his red braces, often on the TV.
He is indeed.
Certainly in the industry, is a famous character, you know. But his firm stood out for various reasons, and it was basically, you know, aggressive reduction of costs, discipline, which is exactly what we wanted. We didn't want the stockbroker model. So essentially, you know, your question is, what is our investment process? Well, our investment process is to outsource it. Our job is to go into fine-grained detail about the client's needs and objectives, their timescales, and their risk tolerance. And by that, I obviously mean all definitions of risk, not just investment risk. And only then, when we've put together the plan, timescales, tax wrappers, stuff like that, then it's like, okay, let's give the money to somebody else to invest. And primarily, that's still 7IM to this day, and they've got 50 million quid of our clients' money.
Oh, that's great. I mean, one of the things I picked up there, and it's what I find with advisors is it's that part of the part of the reason why the FSAs had to obviously do a lot of work on this subject, is that lack of consistency, where you might have two people in a firm or three people in a firm, each of them doing things differently, and to sort of have a single approach, a consistent approach to whatever solution you decide, but it's got to be consistent, hasn't it? It's got to be repeatable. That's the word.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what TCF was all about, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's the sort of robust, repeatable process. We'll talk a little bit about shoehorning and things like that, no doubt, in a minute.
Yes.
But
no, absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. That's what TCF was about. But I don't think we were unusual. I think in the past, and certainly less so now, and RDR I think will finally stamp this out, but certainly in the past, many firms' advisors were essentially collectives of individuals. And I mean, to put it in context, my three colleagues here all used a different fact find document. Okay, so we had to sort that out pretty quickly. All the same information was being taken, but there's no consistency to how it was done. So we've obviously spent a lot of time sorting that out. So yeah, that just gives you an indication as to the uphill battle that I've had since I've been here.
Good. One of the phrase I come across ever so often in talking to advisors is due diligence, and you mentioned that. So for what does that mean, due diligence? How do you conduct a due diligence when you are say you've decided to outsource your investment process? How do you well, you can't outsource the investment process, but you outsource part of it. How do you conduct your due diligence? Or how did you?
At this point, I'd love to say that we had, many meetings and everything written down, and we knew exactly what we were doing. But I'll be honest with you and say we kind of fell on our feet. We landed very well when we ended up choosing 7IM. And they have taught us a lot about how we now feel discretionary management should be done. If I was doing it now, perhaps I'll answer it that way. I think a firm needs to identify what it believes about investment, so how investment should be done. So at the time, I do remember talking to some sort of stockbroker model firms where they would come and say, well, our only charge is 1%, and the dealing fee. And of course, that was an open checkbook, because if they wanted to earn more money, they just place more trades. So, I certainly wanted, I believed at the time that I wanted a set percentage fee, and not not something which was open. I wanted a clear alignment between the manager's fees and the client's sort of aims. So if the manager, if the money reduced, the manager would earn less. So I would encourage anybody, if they're doing due diligence now, to really identify what it is that's important about money for you. So obviously the basics like asset allocation, if you believe, as I do, that asset allocation is a major part of, or major contributor towards returns, then you want a firm with a robust approach to asset allocation. Now, they'll all say that they do, but does it make sense to you? So, so I am taught us a lot about the use of passives. So they actually have a blended approach. But they use the passives to make the short-term tactical asset allocation moves, because you can buy and sell them very quickly. Well, that was new to us. I'd never heard of that before. So we believed in asset allocation. We wanted scientists, not artists, running money. I firmly believe that running money is a science and not an art. I really don't want an artist managing my pension. Thank you very much. I want somebody who, when all hell is breaking loose, I want somebody who has rules that they stick to and criteria under which they work. Now, some people will disagree. There was a bit of a conversation on Twitter earlier today that that investing is an art and not a science. That's fine. Again, if you think it's an art, then you need to find a discretionary manager who thinks the same way. We didn't, and so short answer to your question, Abraham, before I waffle any further, is identify what you believe is important about money. Certain things are a given. Obviously, you want financial strength. You don't want some tin pot little company. I actually saw a company at the time, and we had more under management than they did. So, that wasn't going to happen. So you want financial strength. You want something with some track record, of course. But I particularly was far less concerned about performance than I was about systems, processes, discipline, and things like that. So identify what's important to you and find somebody who matches it.
So it's that evidence-based approach, where actually the investment process, there's a lot of academic thinking going into it. Not just saying, as you said, not just saying, it's not all about performance.
Certainly not. It wasn't for us. It certainly wasn't for us. It was about discipline and method, because we knew that would see us through the rocky times. It's easy for somebody to perform well when markets are going with them. And it's easy to explain underperformance when markets are going against them. What I wanted was somebody who rode through the middle. Didn't aim to shoot the lights out, but aimed to protect as much on the downside as possible. And that's what we found in the end.
Good. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, following the FSA paper FG 1215, what change have you had to make? Any changes to your process? What changes?
The whole sort of restricted advice, centralized investment propositions, are we shoehorning thing? Yeah, I wrote an article on money marketing about that, because that really wound me up when that came out. Because it's like, okay, you spent 5 years telling us to have robust, repeatable processes, and now you want to make sure we're not shoehorning people into those robust, repeatable processes. So I was a bit narked the day when I wrote that. For us, many of our clients are very similar. We're right down at the end of the country. Most of our clients are either immediately pre-retired or in retirement. So they generally want money managed as cautiously as possible, but to achieve the income that they need and things like that. That's mostly it. But of course, not everybody is like that. And so what came out of that paper was, look, we need to, first of all, justify why 7IM is our default choice, but then also identify types of clients where they would not be the obvious choice, both as a discretionary management, and also they offer us a platform, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But identify cases where they would not be the default choice, and then come up with alternatives for those things. So if somebody really wants a high level of income, a natural income, we tend to preach total return, so income and capital return if they're going to make withdrawals and things like that. But some people absolutely want their capital not to be touched and just to have a high natural income. And so, the 7IM doesn't fit naturally into that. They might be a core, but they certainly would want perhaps some high yielding stuff on the satellite approach. So, we need to come up with an option for that, and so we have done. And sometimes, you get clients who want to take a more active approach rather than delegate it. So what do we do then? Do we just say, sorry, you're on your own, you can use our platform, but you're on your own? Or do we say, well, and what we actually do is we talk to them about sectors, and rather than picking funds, we'll use iShares, ETFs and stuff to meet those needs. So what we got out of that was we needed to identify circumstances where the 7IM sort of default wasn't the logical fit, and then come up with an alternative. So part of that then is to sort of decide or work out what your ideal client is, and they would naturally be the ones that fit into 7IM, and then to obviously you can easily pick out which ones aren't your ideal client, if you like, or and then you have a different solution for them. Yeah, and we need to decide firstly whether we want to work with them or not. Obviously, this is new clients. We have a bit of a moral issue with jettisoning existing clients that we've been looking after for 20 years just because they don't fit our sort of more modern model. But I know all the business consultants would tell us to do that. But, we didn't get where we are by doing that up to now, so we've no intention of doing that now. But we're careful who we take on now as a new client. So, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Good. in terms of, I mean, obviously, the other thing I wanted to speak out, 7IM, of course, don't just do discretionary. They've got the, the units, unitized funds
Yeah.
and the model portfolio. Do you tend to use the three of them depending on?
Yeah, we started with discretionary. So
Okay.
when we were looking for an outsourced sort of partner initially, it was for the larger stuff,
Right.
150,000 plus. But
Okay.
then we really liked the way they ran money, and they said, "Hey, we've got these OICs." And we were like, "Oh, really? Oh, well, we'll have a bit of that." Because our ultimate, we love what 7 do at the sort of basic level, the way they run money, what they wrap it
Mm.
up with, to be honest, just makes it more convenient for different kinds of people. So we don't
Hmm.
use their model portfolios, well, not yet anyway, on other platforms, though we
Okay.
may, if that turns out right. We haven't done yet. So we use the discretionary side for the larger stuff. Discretionary for them, and as I believe it should be, it's a service. So for them, that comes with a client manager who sort of helps us and sees the client with us, and then there may be some CGT stuff to do, or whatever, right?
Mm.
If we had a client come to us with a huge stack of share certificates, well, either we do that, or given the amount of money it was, we just said, you do that, and that was fantastic. Or for an ordinary client who's putting 100 quid a month into his ISA or whatever, then we can use the OIC, and it's just perfect, and they get the same basic money management, but at every level. So that we actually quite struggled to find people or sort of potential scenarios where we wouldn't use 7IM. So we
That's
managed to
good.
find a couple, but not many, because they appeal to everybody.
Good. Good. Um, One of the questions that I get advisor asking is how you match the output from your risk profiling or risk tolerance tool to a portfolio or a model portfolio or the solution being offered by the DFM.
Sure.
What risk profiling do you use and how do you do that? How do you match?
Great question, man. I tell you what, we battled long and hard over this. How should we do this? I use a kind of cobbled together risk profile, okay, but hopefully from some good sources. So our questions and the matrix that they go through are from IntelliFlow, which is our
Okay.
back office system, and those were written by Tillinghast Towers Perrin, the actuarial consultancy. So they're good questions written by people a lot smarter than me, all right? And
Okay.
the matrix that they goes through puts them in one of 10 categories. Now, we sort of looked at what they thought those categories should look like in terms of asset allocation, and then we mapped them as closely as we could to 7IM's risk-rated portfolios.
Hmm.
Now, I have a kind of love-hate relationship with risk profiling tools, because any advisor worth their salt knows that that is really only half the story. You've got to take the questions and then talk to them, because very often you get a massively different picture. Because particularly fellas can get quite gung ho when they're answering the question and get all macho about it, and then actually you say, that's okay, a portfolio like that, you need to be happy that it might lose 20% in any one year, and they freak out, and you say, oh, okay, let's tone it down a little bit,
No, I
and
don't
so
want that.
no, exactly. But any good advisor knows that. And so what we do, and one of the things that we decided early on actually, was that we wouldn't do the risk profiling questionnaire with the client. We would leave it with them. And so we
Okay.
designed one which is very client friendly. It has an explanation of investment risk, particularly on the front, and then the questions and the thing, and we leave it with them with a free post envelope, and we get it back, and then we take the results back to them and talk to them about it and show them the different profiles, higher and lower than where they came out. Talk to them about where they came out, what that actually means in real pounds and pence terms, and that's worked really well for us. We also do that with their expenditure. Nothing more boring than asking, how much a month do you spend on food, and how much a month do you spend on electricity? It's just how to kill a conversation dead. So we leave those two things with the client. So hopefully that answers the question. We took these clever questions and the matrix that we run through, that it ran through, and then kind of mapped it as best we could to 7IM's risk-rated portfolios.
Good stuff. And so you've done that, and so you're not doing you've done that already, and you're not having to do it at client level each time a client walks in. You're not having to do that mapping.
No, no, because that's done. We update it every quarter, though. So we
Okay.
sort of take a snapshot of 7IM's asset allocations every quarter and update the asset allocations at that point. But that's enough because they don't change massively unless there's
No.
something fairly major going on in markets.
No, fantastic. Look, there's a lot of good stuff in that so far. I can carry on and on. I'm enjoying this, I have to
Yeah, go for
say.
it, man. I've got no
Uh,
time constraints. I've got to pick up an
but
ironing board from Argos before I go home. So
no,
that's the only thing I've got to do.
no. I'll ask you a couple more questions, and I think we'll wrap things up. But by the way, how often do you review the actual DFM? Once you've chosen one and you're working with them, do you have to say once a year? I don't know. Do you have to look at who else is on the market and
Sure. Yeah. Good question. I do it on an ongoing basis. So I have a document which is our sort of almost like a statement of beliefs about how money should be run and how that has how we filtered the available DFM market to meet our beliefs. Okay, but I mean, I'm sure, like many advisors watching this, they get bombarded with phone calls from providers. Can we come and talk to you about our latest inheritance tax saving proposition? Can we come and talk to you about our new fixed term annuity? All that sort of stuff. Now, we field those, but the only ones I let through are DFMs. And I have a great big box file. In fact, I have a couple up on my shelf there. And in that box file is all the stuff that a DFM provides when I meet them, and I make notes. So, you know, I make meeting notes, right? And then just say, right, well, I've met with these people. This is what I like about them. This is what I don't like. They don't make the cut. Or they do make the cut for this type of client, possibly. Maybe a client really wants some closed-ended stuff, some investment trust, and they really like that, and they want that. I mean, it's very unusual. I don't think I've ever actually had somebody say that to me, but if they did, then we have an option for that. So rather than it be, you know, once a year in January, we'll sit down and review it. It's a kind of a constantly fluid thing. Any DFM rings me, wants to meet, I usually say yes, so that I can see how the market's doing it. And because of that,
they can hear that.
Well, yeah.
If any DFMs watching, obviously they'll
give me a ring.
Call.
But you know, that just means I probably end up seeing between 10 and 15 DFMs every year. But it's, you know, it's an hour of my time each time, which is quite a lot. But that's part of my remit here at Jackson's. I'm managing director, but I'm also sort of operations. So you know, that's one of my things. So I am the guy that vets the DFMs.
So you know who to call. They know who to call. A lot of good stuff in there as well. You know, I think it's easier when you've got your own sort of investment philosophy written out and documented, so you can sort of match whoever brings their ware across, you know, to you. You can sort of ask the question, do they make the cut, yes or no, and that's documented. That's what the FSA wants to see, you know, to see that you're reviewing what's going on in the market and it's properly documented. As they say, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist.
Absolutely right. It's a pain in the neck sometimes, but it's got to be like that. You know, the key with it all is starting with clients, isn't it? I mean, you said that earlier on. You know, it's got to start and end with them, really, rather than that's why it's easy to get around the shoehorning suggestion that we might be shoehorning people, because we've documented the fact that we've started with our client bank and our typical client and found the right solution for us right now, and keeping that under review. And as long as it starts with the client rather than what's convenient for us, you know, then I would hope that the FSA will be happy with that.
Good. Two more questions and we'll wrap things up. No you're obviously in a unique position because I know 7IM also offers a platform.
Yeah.
So again, choosing a DFM and choosing a platform, they kind of go hand in hand. So how do you how do you manage that process as
Yeah.
well?
Sounds like we're tied advisors, doesn't it? That
It
was
does. Well,
Yeah, I know what you mean. It could
yeah.
do. Certainly, that could be the suggestion. I mean, again, I'd love to say that we saw the wrap market coming years ago and we sort of stepped up to the mark early, but we fell into platform use again by 7IM. So we started with the discretionary. Then they said to us, hey, we've got these OICs, so your smaller clients can benefit from what we do as well. And we were, oh, great. And then they said, hey, the cheapest way to buy our OICs is on our platform. Oh, really? Well, we'll have a bit of that
Yeah.
then. And so
Surprise.
again, we kind of
Surprise.
fell into it, but we feel very blessed because we fell on our feet. Now, it's an excellent platform, but it isn't perfect. I don't believe any of them are, but it is an excellent platform. And because we've been involved with them so long, I had a meeting only a day before yesterday with the head of platform at 7IM, just putting our suggestions forward for improvements and things like that. And they're very responsive. But there are times, there are particular types of client that might come where actually it's not the best platform for the job. And so we have identified others for certain types of clients. And all we will do is we will buy the 7IM funds on an alternative platform if that's what is right for our clients. But yeah, we're conscious. And again, the FG 1215 paper that came out, I realized, we really have got to document this as well. We've got to have alternatives and scenarios in which those alternatives would be used in order to meet these requirements. So that's all we've done. It's just an extension of what we did with the DFM, really.
Good. So obviously you've answered the independence question then, haven't you? Because you have other. Sorry.
I hope so.
Yeah, because because you have other options that you use as well. So
yes. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Finally, what would you say to advisors thinking of outsourcing the investment process? What would be your top tips to them, if you like?
Okay. I mean, obviously, if you've decided to outsource already, I think that's a great decision. Again, as I said sort of earlier on, I would never judge any IFA for deciding that they could do it themselves. But I just looked at the resources required to do that on a consistent basis. And the fact that we had no desire to do it, that's what made the outsourcing decision easy for us. So assuming that decision has been made, then it's worth sitting down and writing down what you believe about how investment should be done. Questions like active versus passive, or a blend. The weight that the particular manager that you might want would give to asset allocation, and then long-term strategic, short-term tactical asset allocation. How does that actually outwork in practice? Look at the obvious things like financial strength. If it's a privately held company, then what happens when the principals retire and things like that? These are all questions. And then just the mechanics. What kind of relationship are you going to have with them? Even down to things like the reporting. What's the reporting like? So, picture the ideal scenario. What would be the ideal discretionary management partnership look like? What would you be happy talking to your clients about? And find somebody that you can relax in the knowledge that the money is being run along those terms so that you can get on with what you're good at, which is client relationships, planning. My experience is that clients don't give much of a monkeys, to be honest, about the day-to-day tweaks. They just want to know it's being done right. They want to know that they can sleep at night if things are going rocky, and if they want to know that they've got somebody they can turn to. But DFM done right still means that the person they talk to is the person with whom they have the primary relationship, which is the advisor, not the DFM. Think of it as a GP and specialist approach. The GP is the one that you have the relationship with and who knows really about your history. The DFM is the specialist that you bring in to do a certain job. Just find somebody that does it well.
Good. I like that. The IFA or the advisor is the GP, and the DFM is the specialist. No, that's fantastic. Well, I think we can end. I think we can end on that note, can't we?
We can, man. It's been great to speak to you.
Good. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll speak to you later.
Have a great weekend. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.